Caroline speaking. So it's 11 o'clock and there's quite a few people that we're expecting that haven't arrived yet. But I just thought if we start and we can start doing introductions and then people can come along and they won't have missed anything massive. But they can join in, and if they have missed anything, then they can watch the recording again later. So the first thing I am going to say is that Melanie, can you take it? Can you still let people in while you do your introduction?
I can indeed, yeah.
Okay, so this is Melanie, who is coordinating the technology, and she'll explain how the event's going to run.
Hello everyone, Melanie speaking. Hi. Yes, so as Caroline's just said, I am here as kind of event host, but also troubleshooter. So if at any point you have any questions or queries, feel free to just reach out to me and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to help. Also, if for any reason you get jumped out of the meeting, just use that same link and it will take you straight back into this meeting and you will be joined with us for the rest of the discussion today. I am going to introduce or get our lovely BSL interpreter to say hello as well. So if I can just say, you can just say hello for us. Fantastic. So we're joined today by Jenna. Does anybody need to access the BSL today? Because I can help you with pinning Jenna if you need to pin Jenna. Okay, if anybody at any point would like to, do just reach out to me again and I can help you with that and we can get Jenna pinned so you can see her throughout the rest of the discussion. We've also today got captioning if anyone would like to use that. So if at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little captioning icon. And if you would like to use captioning as well, just click on that and it should pop up. But again, if you need any help with that, just reach out to me. And is everyone fairly familiar with Zoom? Yeah, I would think so by now. It feels like everybody. Great, fantastic. Very good. So today what we're going to be doing is we'll be using the chat function today. So if you have any questions, if you've got any questions right now, feel free to ask those in the chat function and as we go. And then later on, we'll also be opening up so that you can ask your questions verbally or on camera. And today's session is a relaxed session. So if at any point you want to turn your cameras off and you need to make a brew or anything like that, feel free to do so. And today's session is also being recorded. So again, if you turn your camera off, you won't be seen on that recording. But if you turn your camera on, you may be seen on the recording that will be going out. I think that is probably most of the things that I need to say. But as if there is anything, I'm here to be troubleshooted with. And one thing I've realized that we've not done, which if it's okay, I'm going to launch the poll. Is that okay, Caroline? Just at this point, we have a little poll just to see who's already listened to and experienced our line, just so we can get a little show of hands. So I'm just going to launch that now and get you guys, if you have a motor, fingers crossed, it should pop up on your screen. Fantastic, I can see you doing it. Brilliant. So it looks like on here the majority of people have already experienced our line, which is fantastic. So we've got 80% have and then 20% who haven't. So that may well appear. I'm going to share those results just on the screen as well. So hopefully that has popped up on your screen. Brilliant. I'm going to pass it back over to Caroline to kickstart the rest of the event.
Lovely. So that gives us a really good sense that that most people know exactly what we're talking about, but there are a couple of people in the Zoom and we haven't made them raise their hands so that no one needs to know who they are, that haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. So when we're talking about it, let's just bear in mind that most people know, a couple of people might just need a little bit of a catch up. So my name's Caroline Pearce. I run a company called Luxi that does events called Jabberwocky Market pop-up theatre events. It's basically about performance and arts events in places that connect with communities. Often those are surprising places. Sometimes they're on a train, sometimes they're in your headphones, sometimes they're in a pub, sometimes they're just in a theatre. And it's a thing that I've been doing for about 7 years with loads of collaborators and colleagues and people. So we were really excited to be able to work with people to create this show and then to bring it back in 2020. And I'm really delighted actually to be able to have the chance to have this conversation with more people that might be interested in this show or other things, and find out more about your worlds, because that's what I'm fascinated about. It's about other people's lives and what they're curious about and passionate about. The way that today's event's going to run is, first of all, I'll ask the other speakers to introduce themselves really briefly. When we've done that, then we'll go back to some of the key team members, some of the key people who've been involved in running and making Our Line happen. And I'm going to ask them at that point to talk a little bit more about how they got involved in Our Line, what they first thought it was, their kind of journey with it, and what Our Line as a whole has inspired for them. And then when we've done those introductions, then I'm hoping that it turns into more of a multi-way conversation. I've got plenty of questions if no one has any, but I find that unlikely. So first of all, Kirsten, do you want to introduce yourself?
Kirsten speaking. Hello everyone. I am Kirsten, and I'm an artist and have worked with Luxi for about 5 years. And I worked as project coordinator on Our Line, which was a lot of fun, a lot of train journeys, a lot of listening. And you may have seen me on multiple posters for Our Line as well. And that's about it really.
Thank you. Hannah?
Hannah speaking. So I'm Hannah. I was the lead artist on Our Line. So essentially I wrote the script and kind of collaborated with the most amazing team of people, Kirsten and Caroline included, and all the kind of backstage people that I didn't directly work with, but were making the trains run and all that kind of thing. And essentially spent a lot of time on the Bishop line, partly just travelling and thinking and sort of pulling together themes that might be in the show, partly researching, and then a lot of time talking to the local community and recording interviews. Jonathan Ito was a really close collaborator on that. He was doing all the sound, and we would travel around with big fluffy microphones and that sort of thing. So that's essentially it at the moment.
And Felicity?
Hi everybody, I'm Felicity Mcnicki and I'm the officer for the Community Rail Partnership. So the Community Rail Partnership is the conduit between Northern, who run the train service, and the community who use the train service, and we're here to get the best service we can for that community and to enrich the lives of those who live in the community by helping them get to things by using our railway.
Anne-Marie.
Caroline, good morning everyone. I'm Marie Addison and I'm the Community and Sustainability Manager for Northern in the North East region. So I work very closely with Felicity to try and promote the line, to get, encourage our communities to travel on our services. And then I've also been working with Caroline and the team since the very beginning of this project to bring it all to fruition. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely. One thing I think that I forgot to mention is if anybody has any questions throughout the event, please either raise your hand or write them in the chat, because if it's like a question of clarifying something or understanding what people are saying, we're more than happy to just take those as the questions come up. But now that everyone's introduced themselves, I'm going to go back to Marie and ask her to tell you a bit more about how she got involved in Our Line and her, I don't know why I've started using this word, like her journey with the project.
My journey, yeah.
And what Our Line inspires for you.
Yes, so yeah, thanks Caroline again. Yeah, so back in 2017, I think it was, Bob, who was Felicity's predecessor with the Bishop Line, he approached me one day and said, Marie, how do you fancy doing a project, theatre on train? And I was, intrigued, very intrigued. And I thought, first initial sort of response was, we're going to get people on the train to do a play in front of our customers. But no, that's not what it was. It was something completely different, which overwhelmed me. And then we met with Caroline and Kirsten, and they explained a little bit more of what theatre on trains was going to sort of look like and evolve into. And it was mind blowing. It really was. And I was so excited about the project. I thought, yes, I haven't heard of anything like this happen on a train before. So yeah, we were really keen to work with them and get this project off the ground. So the initial sort of project itself was to encourage people to travel on the train, but also to listen to the theatre on train through the headphones and enjoy the journey between Darlington and Bishop Auckland. So creating, the event itself, the launch event was great. We got lots of people on board. We had a big event at Darlington Station. LNER were on board. It was fantastic. Had the little market stalls. It was a really, really good day. And what came from that was, the feedback from people travelling on the train and experiencing theatre on train was overwhelming. It was amazing. So that was the initial pilot project in the first instance, and then we've also always discussed where could we go next with this, and then sort of we've always been keen to expand it or to revisit the project, and then we've got COVID hit. So when Caroline got in touch again at the beginning of the year and said how can we adapt this to align with COVID, and she came up with the idea of doing it virtually for people at home or wherever. It just sort of reignited that sort of excitement again to get this second part of the project. So yeah, so when Caroline sent it over and I've listened to it, it's just it's so soothing. I've listened to it this morning again whilst I've been working at home on my laptop. And I've had it on in the background, and it just takes your mind away that bit. It's soothing. It's the songs on it that the people speaking on it. It's just fantastic, and I'm overwhelmed with the project itself. It's just been absolute pleasure. Yeah, even though we haven't been able to encourage people to travel on our trains, this is still something for our customers and our communities. So thank you. I'd like to thank Caroline and the team and Felicity for that. So yeah, is that okay, Caroline? Have I explained it okay?
That's great, and we thank you as well. It's been, for me, it's a great project. I've really enjoyed working on it. I would like to invite now Felicity to talk about your kind of how you came into it. And because you're much more recent to the project, as Marie said, when I first started talking, it was with Bob, your predecessor, and he was very excited about theatre on trains, and we sort of took that journey, that kind of conversational journey together about what kind of thing that could be and how to start that. And so I'm a bit intrigued, really, when you when this first came across your desk and you were like, what did you think it was, and how now that you know exactly and you've been involved in it, how is that different or better, or I'm really interested for you, how you came into the project and what that's inspired for you.
Hi, Felicity speaking. So thanks, Caroline. I think the interesting thing, first of all, to start with my discussion about this is the first meeting that we had about this, Caroline, was on Zoom because COVID had literally just hit. So you were my very first Zoom meeting. And that's the way it's been ever since, apart from the odd meeting on the street, which has been lovely. So for me, when I first started looking at this as an officer, I hadn't heard the hour line recording. And in my mind, I expected it to be that people would sit on the train, look out of the window and understand the journey that they were taking. They might have reference to what they were seeing in the headphones, or they might recognize things that they could see out of the window and they would hear about it in the play. And then miraculously, when I did listen to it, it was nothing like that, but I loved it all the same. It was so different from that. I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't listened to it yet. But my biggest wish for this was, with so many people working from home, being isolated, and so many of our passengers who either want to travel by train to get to work or want to travel by train to just go and see things and be out of the house, they couldn't do that at the minute, could they? There was so many restrictions. And Our Line, my wish for Our Line was that people could stick the headphones on and just zone out of whatever's happening in their kitchen or wherever they're working, or, you know, homeschooling, and just go, oh, I can remember what it's like to be on the train, and I can't wait to get back on again, for whatever that reason that their journey is for, that they just remember what it's like to listen to other people talking. Because no offense, I love speaking to people on the computer, but I love sitting on the train and just like listening to other people's conversations. So that's what I love about it. And I think that's what it then sparks my mind to wander. Whereas when I'm sitting and doing work, it doesn't have time to wander. So to take that chance to just perhaps sit, and because I'm from the Northeast, so the voices in the recordings are really recognizable as family voices. The music's very recognizable. So I really enjoyed listening and just reminiscing about family get-togethers. So I've kind of taken this really a bit more of a personal project rather than something for the community, but I think that's what everybody will also do. So it's about personal reflection, isn't it, and personal journeys. I've absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to hear what everybody else thinks about it as well.
Brilliant, Felicity, thank you. The next person I think that we probably all want to hear from is Hannah, who created the show. And as I said before, if you want to ask questions along the way, absolutely do that. But for now, I will ask Hannah to talk about how she made the show, any of her other work, and what it's inspired for her.
Thank you. I have to say, it's been so lovely hearing from Marie and Felicity, because we haven't really talked about it before. And it's amazing what's come out of it for you, because I think it actually really reflects the process that we went through in terms of making it. So for me, so I work a lot with headphone theatre, if we call it that. And actually, previously in the past, I've worked a lot. There's my door. Sorry, it's all right. My husband will get that. We've worked a lot with dancers, and we have had live performers, but we've had the audience hearing sound as the performers are in front of them. So this was really exciting for me, in the sense that I had to focus very much on the narrative that was completely in your head. You know, it wasn't so much thinking about the external that comes alongside it. And I think there's something about headphone work that is actually intensely personal, because you're literally hearing something right inside your own head. And there's that thing, isn't there, often, you know, if you're on a bus and you're listening to music or whatever, you kind of, it's almost like you feel you're the star of your own film or something like that. So I was really working with that idea of trying to play to the strengths of that kind of work and make it really personal. And alongside that, had this absolutely incredible discovery that my great-grandmother came from Shildon. And And when Caroline and I first started talking about the project, I hadn't realised, because I grew up in London, and the part of the family I knew about from that side came, as far as I was concerned, from Southampton. And as I started to work on the piece and started talking to my family about the project I was working on, it became apparent that actually further back in my family, my great-great-grandmother had lived in Shildon. And before that, she had been born in Arkengarthdale, and then they'd moved to Shildon. So suddenly there was this incredibly personal, yeah, it was intense, actually. It was really, and it gave me this way into thinking about family. And I think out of that came all these connections with these incredible interviewees, because essentially Kirsten and Caroline put me in touch with the most amazing people who live along the stations, along the Bishop line, and kind of hearing their stories and how that linked to this place was kind of this magical thing for me, because it actually opened up all this stuff around perhaps what my grandmother might have experienced, the kind of history of it, looking at the landscape, the industry, the economics, the social side of it, what people did for work, and then stories about families. And so once I had all of that rich material, I had to work out how to start fitting it together. And obviously we had this amazing structure of the actual train journey itself and the kind of stations that you stop at. So that was one way of structuring. But alongside that, I was also thinking about the kind of commonalities. So things like photographs. And that came out of the fact that I didn't have a photograph of my great-grandmother. But actually that's a really brilliant way into conversations with people, if they can share photographs and talk about that from the past. So it was kind of a way of establishing a connection on the interviews almost. Right, Caroline, tell me what else, where should I stop now? Are there questions? Maybe there are questions.
Yeah, does anybody have a question for Hannah or for anybody at this point? Okay. Feel free to ask, because I don't want to take it over, but oh, Keremy Roberts raised her hand. How would you like to ask that question, Keremy? Are you going to come on video, or will you write it in the chat? Oh, we can hear you. I've
just lost it.
I can hear you, Keremy. Melanie, can you try and... Okay.
I'm just getting, yeah, get her now, but here we go. Fingers
While
crossed.
Melanie finds that question. Yeah, it's coming.
I think we might have a question. I think it's going into the chat at the moment, yeah.
And Keremy's listened to it a lot of times. Keremy was very helpful in helping me work out the mechanics of how we convert it, actually, how we made, because it sounds really simple. It certainly sounded very simple to me because in 2018, when we did the first version, it was a headphone show. It was, you download it on your device, you put headphones on. When we ran it in 2018, Kirsten and a big team of people existed on Darlington Station, and audiences came along and they downloaded the app in advance, and we had people there to help them, but actually they didn't really need very much help. The show was always timed to go on a specific train. You couldn't just download it and listen to it when you wanted. And we had a member of Kirsten's team who went with the passengers just in case they had any troubles or questions. They often didn't, sometimes did. And what we found was often that on the journey back, because it's one way, but when in real life physically people would take the train from Darlington to Bishop Auckland, and more often not then just come back on the train, and so then have these really rich conversations about what the show had inspired or what the journey had, and really interesting chats. And so when I was saying in 2020, well, I was like, this is COVID secure. Like, you can speak to people, but you don't have to. You don't need to be closer than 2 meters. It's your device. You don't have to touch anything. This is the show that we can do absolutely exactly functionally. And then that turned out not to be the best idea. And so we were like, well, that's fine. Well, we'll just make it available to people to listen to whenever they want. And oh my gosh, the mechanics of that, the logistics of that, doing things online is so much more complicated than it deserves to be, I think. But yeah, that's interesting. Keremy's questions come through. Keremy, can we hear you?
I think it's a bit too tricky with the tech, so they're just asking in the chat instead.
Could you read her question just so it's not my voice again?
Absolutely. Melanie speaking, asking Keremy's question. Did you know how awesome this final version of the show is? Final version of the show is much easier for some people to access to. Will this affect your future work and the way that access is in your future work?
I wonder who that's to. Does anyone want to take it?
Well, shall I just give the sort of my perspective on it? Is that it is amazing the way. I mean, the pandemic's been a terrible thing, but one amazing thing that's come out of it is everybody has suddenly had to start to make this shift, and it's no longer about a few people being interested in something online. It's actually something that's become really quite mainstream, and I think that's a really wonderful opportunity, and it does mean that people who might not have been able to access arts and culture in some ways can now. I suppose from a very personal perspective from me, the challenge is always about how to reach an audience, whether that's actually a kind of physical audience or whether it's a digital audience. Often it's hard either way, and that's why it's so brilliant to work with people like Caroline, because you know, I think one of the amazing things about what Caroline does is she's constantly thinking about audiences and engaging people, and it being more of a conversation than just trying to get a bum on a seat in a theatre. So that's my perspective.
Hiya there. Hiya, Hannah.
Keremy, can you say Keremy speaking?
Can you hear me speaking?
We've got a BSL interpreter. Can you say Keremy speaking when you start, please? Yay.
Hi, Keremy speaking. I'm just sorry to reiterate my question. My main question was about access, but the other question that I asked, I'm so excited to meet Hannah, because and all of you, because we did really enjoy these. And I'm allowed to take 2 seconds just to explain how we heard it. Is that I've the time for that?
We don't have tons of time, but yeah, if you can do it quickly, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Super quick version. Miserable child, miserable 13-year-old, just in the middle of a cultural wasteland, as she put it, and miserable and grumpy with all of us. And Caroline said, hey, can you test this out? And I was like, wow, yes, please, for other reasons as well, because and I thought, would it be crazy asking our 13-year-old to join in? Because I wasn't sure who you'd aimed it for, and I hadn't listened to it yet. I asked Caroline quickly, you know, does this have any sex or drugs or rock and roll in? But that's fine, because Emily likes things that don't have that stuff in anyway as well. So I kind of grabbed her on the bed. I was ill. We were all a bit off, and grabbed her. And I just so perfectly, that feeling of escapism that you mentioned, Felicity, was incredible. And I think I just wondered, while she was listening, I looked over and I wondered, wow, I wonder if Hannah and the team imagined that a 13-year-old, you know, who, I don't know, if I'd have said to her, do you want to come and see a show on a train? She may have been a little skeptical, but she absolutely loved it. She's a bit cross that she's at school today, because she wanted to kind of meet you. She's a bit of a fan, but she really loved it, and it was such an exciting like family event. But I just thought it was incredibly clever because it was so intimate and personal. So I just wonder, Hannah, when you were kind of writing, did you imagine who you were writing for? And I just, if you don't mind me asking, would like to know if the fact that my 13-year-old was listening to it on our big double bed in the middle of a worldwide national, health pandemic, would you have ever in a million years thought that? Thank you.
Oh, what an amazing question. I mean, I would never have imagined that. But I'm so delighted that that is the case. I mean, I think so the reason that makes me feel very happy is, I guess, I've done a lot of thinking when I was writing the piece about the relationship between generations. And actually it was a really personal experience for me, because I was kind of thinking about my great-grandmother, and it led me to ask myself questions like, what would you say to a great-grandchild, if you were to write them a letter, or leave them a song, or highlight a moment in your life, or a familiar habit, or what would those things be? That was kind of my way into imagining, and there's kind of simply no bridging a childhood in the 1890s in Arkengarthdale with the sort of cut and thrust of the inner city in the 1980s, where I grew up in London. So I was kind of thinking about, how on earth do you span those different experiences? And I guess what I was left with is this amazing sense of curiosity about somebody that I've never had a chance to meet. And I think that really informed on all sorts of levels, because it also then is a way of bridging the kind of conversations that I was having with other members of the community, and allowing that curiosity, hopefully both ways. I mean, I think it was quite a random and strange experience for them, as well as for us to have these conversations. But really a lot of it was about memory. And so the idea of it speaking to a 13-year-old completely delights me, because actually it sort of speaks to this thing of cross-generational.
Thanks, Hannah. There's quite a few questions in the chat now. Can I jump to Katie Musgrove's question? Katie said, I really appreciate that Jenna's here today with the BSL interpretation, and was BSL included in this project throughout? And that reminds me that I didn't explain at the start. So no, but I've got a timeline. The project started, and actually Caroline Holden's question about how long has it taken to bring it to, how long it's taken is very, very much a piece of not even string, sort of mohair wool, that Hannah and I started talking probably 2015, 2016 about our shared interests in connecting with audience, and what I said at the start about fascination with other people's lives, and how we can tell stories that share wonderful stories, that share curiosities and that sort of thing. And Hannah and I have fascinating long conversations about that stuff. And it was a meeting with Bob at a really formal networking meeting. So Bob, Felicity's predecessor, that was where both of us went, oh, I do theatre, and he went, oh, I do trains, and he went, have you thought about theatre on trains? And I went, have you thought about having theatre on trains? And like we were both, we meant very different things by those terms at that point, but that was the connection, and that was probably 2016, 17, I don't know exactly. So it's about building a relationship and understanding one another's worlds, and finding the right artist to start those connections with, and finding ways to, that's generally how I work. So like we could have done it much quicker than that, but for me, there's something about starting a relationship and then just being kind of aware of the world and noticing when the right connection can be made, and then going, right, okay, now we've got it, this is the right audience for that partnership, for that artist, now we can make it happen. And then you put in a funding bid and you pull together some partners, and it becomes much more a mechanical, let's run a project. BSL, so today I was absolutely, I'm just really pleased that we're able to bring Jenna to this conversation, because we've worked with Jenna before and audiences really love her. The minute we put Jenna on, often we get an audience just for Jenna. And I don't think there's anybody today that is actually using the BSL interpretation, but we're in the middle of this timeline, and I don't know what happens in the future. And wouldn't it be wonderful if BSL users come to this conversation, and with some of us are here and we start to go, okay, what do you need? What are you interested in? What are we both interested in together? What have we got in common, and how can we make a project around that? And so for me, that's yeah, and also I want to commission Jenna in a show because everyone really loves her. So right now, BSL users can't access the show as it stands, but that's simply a snapshot.
We do have the script available, but obviously it's not the same experience. But you know, in terms of purely accessing it, that is possible.
And then Karen Bennett said, I remember seeing this project at the Northern Conference in 2018 when me and Kirsten went down to Manchester and in our fancy dresses. And Karen, you said that you'd only worked in Community Rail for a week at that time. Well, it's kind that you say that it was a fantastic idea, because we think that too. Does anybody else have any questions at the moment? Felicity?
Hi, Felicity speaking. Yeah, it's not really so much a question, but just a little bit of carry on from what you were saying, Caroline, and also addressing the fact that Caroline Holden's question was that this project has come to fruition. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that yes, it's come to fruition to a point where the audio is here to listen to, but what we're doing today is a next step of the project. You can listen to the audio at home and get something from it, but I've got even more from it by being in this room and listening to other people's views. And I think that's the next step, isn't it, Caroline, of whether we take it and adapt the conversations to BSL groups or take it to young people in schools. So that would address Kerami's question as well, or do we take it to people who are job seekers? I just love the fact that we could have these very different conversations, whether they've listened to our line or not. We could have some really interesting conversations about family and about heritage, spurred on by the Our Line recording.
It would work, Caroline speaking, it would work beautifully in schools.
It would,
I was part of some research very, very briefly that touched on the fact that giving students, especially teenagers with lots of distractions, they react very differently to art when in their own private space, and that did include having headphones on. I do think the whole headphone factor is so special about this, that idea that you've got private space and that you've got a private relationship with the creators and with the material, but at the same time being on headphones you can be together, whether it's online or in a space. I do think that's an incredible thing about it. Thank you.
Felicity speaking. Sorry, to add to that as well, my children are in primary school and they use something in their lessons called Now Press Play. You might have heard of it, and it's exactly that. It's headphones and they are free to move their bodies, but they're all listening to the same thing, and it's fascinating watching the group of children doing similar but different things with their bodies when they're listening to the same audio. So yeah, it works from any age, doesn't it?
Which is a perfect segue into Fiona's question, which Fiona says in the chat. Do you want to ask your question, Fiona?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I was just wondering if you had, sorry, it's Fiona speaking. I was just wondering if you had taken it to care homes or people who can't get out on the line, sort of housebound communities, people like that.
And yeah, when that came up, oh my God, no, we haven't taken it to care homes, but what a brilliant idea. I have done, like, I have a lot of previous connections with care homes, and throughout this year I've been going, what can I do? Can I, like, offer to phone up some people who can't have visitors? And like, there's so much admin involved that I didn't pursue that. But you know, yeah, has anybody done work like that?
Felicity speaking, I'd love to see the connection between care homes and schools. Imagine
Yes.
a conversation between a care home resident and a primary school child about this as well. I'd love that.
Don't miss out the secondary kids.
Oh, no, of course not.
Don't miss out the teenagers. I know they're grumpy, but they respond to this, and it's amazing. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Because there must be a lot of projects that we're about to do that have been completely cut short. I think just to respond to what you said about generations, and I'm not gushing, but I think anything of quality is always going to penetrate all age groups and all demographics. And I know at the time I was really excited to access it, but I couldn't get on the train. I'm a wheelchair user, so I literally couldn't get on the train. And there's no reason why, well, there is, I'm sure Caroline could think of some, but gosh, there's no reason why you couldn't do both at this, all different facets. But I do think the quality of that rich material you spoke about, Hannah, and the writing is definitely a factor in it working, isn't it?
And can I just jump on that 1 second? Because obviously wheelchairs can get on the trains on Bishop Line. It was just a logistical thing in the 2018 rollout, that because we had it on specific trains that felt really important at the time and no longer is important, but it was on specific trains, and it was only on for a certain amount of time. It was certain days, certain trains over a very kind of limited time period, that then logistically coordinating to get Keremy a wheelchair space on one of those trains, we didn't manage to make that happen at that point. Obviously wheelchairs can go on the train.
Yeah, sorry, you're right, Keremy speaking. To be honest, it was more me, it wasn't the production. I think I probably could have accessed it, you're right. I just wasn't very well. But I think that's important as well. That's why when I was ill, when I heard it on the app, it resonated with me. That's why. But yes, you're absolutely right. Things don't always, I mean, it's like the people in the care home. Hypothetically, people from a care home probably could get on the train, but it doesn't mean that person in a care home is able to, if that makes sense. That is the nature of even the best access. Thank you. Right,
Thanks, Keremy. We've just got 1 more minute. Does anybody have any comments or questions that we haven't addressed yet? Yes. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, it's Ian here. I'm through now? Yeah.
Yes.
This is either going to be interesting or acutely embarrassing in the sense that I am Hannah's dad. So you can work out that I'm in the line of going back to one of the characters there called Nora. And it's been an uncanny experience. I obviously went on the train journey and I've listened to it since then. And this emphasis on intergenerational linkage is quite eerie, because I mean, I knew Nora, although she died when I was 7, and have learned a lot about her background. And the thought that someone who lived in the late 1800s into the 1900s has gone through part of my memory through to Hannah, through to all these other people, is just a wonderful feeling. just a wonderful feeling. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone involved, because it's been obviously very successful from all the comments in this discussion, but it's also been a very moving and meaningful experience for me.
That's wonderful, thank you. And I do want to wrap up, because we said we'd finish at 11:45, but before we do that, I just would like, if anybody actually, but specifically the speakers, had just 20 seconds kind of final thought that they wanted to share. Dive in. Kirsten. Oh, go on, Marie.
Sorry. Yeah, just again, a huge thank you to you for this, for coming to us with the project and proposing it to us. This is not the end. When I spoke to you yesterday, Caroline, I said, this project, it started tiny and then it grew legs. And then we're going to grow more legs and more legs. And then just speaking to you guys today, listening to the comments and the questions, it's definitely going to grow legs, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and we're going to capture a much bigger audience. And then hopefully one day we will be able to encourage people to actually travel on the train and listen to the production on the train. But for the minute, this is the best it's going to be for our customers and communities. So thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Marie. Felicity?
Yeah, I'm going to take it as a personal action that I have shared it with members of my family anyway, but it gives me a reason to actually share it with, gosh, it's quite emotional, the only elderly person in our family who's still alive before it's too late. So that's what I'm going to do with it next, and have a conversation with her about it and see if it sounds like anything that she recognises. Thank you, Hannah.
Wonderful, thank you. Kirsten?
Kirsten speaking. Yeah, I think it's just reiterating kind of what Marie said. I'm really excited to just get out of what's happening at the moment and be able to take expand further past computer screens and phone screens, potentially back out into the world and see how we can develop further. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And can I give the last word to Hannah?
Thank you. Well, actually, this has been a really extraordinary experience for me, and thank you to everyone who's been here, because it's the first time I've had a really in-depth discussion since we were on the train, and that was such a lovely memory of hearing people responding on the spot, and this has been such an amazing echo. And I suppose with all the recent events, since then, this last year has been such a tough one. And one of the things that making the piece has really made me think about is, in terms of my relationship with Nora, but actually I think this applies more widely, is sort of partly how to grieve the people that you've never met, but also how to celebrate the people that you didn't know. And so I'd leave you with that.
So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody, all the speakers. Thank you, Jenna, for just brilliant interpretation. Thank you, Melanie, for making the event work, and for everybody for being here. Melanie's just popped in the chat. If you use social media, if you could keep the conversation going, I think is a really nice way of putting it. We use the hashtag #OurLine. The apps that are in the chat at the moment are for Twitter and Instagram in most cases. Basically, if you want to access any information about the project, go to jabberwockymarket.org.uk. There's links to everything there. So that's Jabberwocky, like the creature out of Lewis Carroll, jabberwockymarket.org.uk. Go to that website. You've probably been there if you've downloaded the show. and there's links. We're going to start sharing some of the feedback there. We are about to, we're starting to encourage, if you've done the feedback form, the last question is, if you were to write a letter to Nora, what would you say? We're going to start to make more of that and collect feedback about what you would say to one of the characters. And that's a reminder that there is a little survey on the download. We just love your feedback. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.